we begin, let me briefly explain the objective of these presentations. By the end of these presentations, the audience will be able to explain the cognitive approach, behaviorist approach, and humanistic approach to learning. In addition, in the presentations, we'll describe the key principle, major theory, and core assumptions of each approach. I will also demonstrate how this theory can be applied in primary schools through realistic teaching example. And I will be evaluating one strength and one limitations of each learning approach to provide a balanced understanding of their effectiveness in educations. Discuss the three approach. This is important to understand what learning theories are. Learning theories are framework that explain how students acquire knowledge, develop new skills, and change their behavior through different learning experience. This theory helps teachers understand how learn takes place and provide guidance in design effective lessons. Learning theories, because learning theories is important for students learn differently. Some students learn through thinking and problem solving, while others respond better to reinforcement or emotional support. By understanding these different teachers can choose teaching strategy. That means students deserve learning needs. Theory is cognitive approach. This theory explains what learning is effective mental process involving thinking, reasoning, memories, and problem solving. Rather than simply receiving information, students actively construct knowledge by connecting new ideas with what they already know. Several important principles in cognitive approach. Learning is active. Students use mental process to understand information. Theory knowledge influence new learning, and problem solving help deep understanding. Three major theories contribute of this theory. First, Jean Piaget explained that children thinking develop through different stages of cognitive development. Second, Sky emphasize that's important of social interactions of teacher guardians through the zone of proximal development. And second is Jeremy Brenner believe students learn best through discover learning, where they explore ideas and construct their own understanding. Overall, this theory assumes that meaningful learning occurs when students active thinking, analyze, and connect new knowledge with their previous experience. This part, practical example of the cognitive approach can be seen in our Year 4 science lesson and floating and sinking object. At the beginning of the lesson, the teacher prepares several objects such as a coin, a sponge, a plastic bottle, and wooden block. Instead of immediately explain the concept, the teacher asks students to predict whether each object will float off or sink and explain the reason of their prediction. Students will work together in a small group to test their predictions through simple experiment. So during this activity, the teacher guide the discussion by asking questions as why do you think this object floated? Or what similarity can you observe among the floating objects? After completing the experiment, students discuss their findings and explain their conclusions based on evidence they collected. This this activity, the cognitive approach, because students actively build their understanding through observation, inquire, discussions, and problem solving instead of memorizing facts. This is the offer several advantages. One major strength is that develop student critical thinking and problem solving skill. Instead of memorizing information, students learn to analyze situations and make connections to understand concept in more deeply. This leads more meaningful that is more likely to be remembering and applied in different contexts. However, this approach also has some limitations. Cognitive learning activities often require more classroom time because students need opportunity to explore, discuss, and reflect. So, teacher must also have strong questioning and facilitation skill to guide students effectively. Because without proper support, some students may struggle to participate in higher order thinking activities. So, overall, this theory is higher effective for promoting deep understanding and lifelong learning when implemented with appropriate guidance. The second theory is the behaviorist approach, view learning as a change in observable behavior that occur through interactions with the environment. Unlike the cognitive approach, which focus on mental process, but behaviorist approach is emphasize behavior that can be seen, measured, and reinforced. The key principles of this approach include stimulus and response, reinforcement, repetitions, and practice. Positive reinforcement, such as a prize or reward, encourage students to repeat desirable behavior, while negative reinforcement remove unpleasant conditions to strengthen behavior. These three major theories contribute to this approach. First, Ivan Pavlov introduced classical conditioning through his experience on conditioned responses. Second, John B. Watson believed that human behavior is shaped by environmental experience. And the third is B.F. Skinner developed operant conditioning to explaining that behavior is influenced by reward and consequence. Overall, the behaviorist approach assumes that learning occurs when students respond to stimuli and their behavior triggered through reinforcement. A common classroom example of the behaviorist approach is during a class English vocabulary lesson. The teacher introduced new words using flashcard or asked students to identify or pronounce each word correctly. Whenever students answer correctly, the teacher immediately provides positive reinforcement through verbal praise, sticker, or reward point. Students make mistakes, receive corrective feedback, and encouraged to try again. Repetition play an important role in this lesson. Students repeatedly practice the vocabulary through games, drills, or classroom activity until they become familiar with the words. In this example, the teacher controls the learning environment while students learn by responding to stimuli and receive reinforcement. This demonstrates the main principles of the behaviors approach.
Now, let's look at the strength and limitation of the behaviorist approach. One major strength of behaviorism is that it can improve students' participation because reinforcement encourages students to repeat desired behaviors. It is also useful for developing basic skills through practice and immediate feedback. For example, Tadayana 2025 found that positive reinforcement such as praise and encouragement supported students' engagement, confidence, and participation in an EFL classroom. However, behaviorism also has limitations. Since it focuses mainly on observable behavior, it may give less attention to students' emotions, creativity, and critical thinking skills. In addition, students may become dependent on external rewards and participate only because they expect a reward rather than because of genuine interest in learning. Overall, behaviorism is highly effective for teaching basic skills and managing classroom behavior. However, it should be combined with other learning approaches to encourage deeper understanding and long-term motivation. Next, I will explain the humanistic theory of learning. Humanistic theory focuses on the whole person by supporting students' intellectual, emotional, and personal growth. Instead of focusing only on academic achievement, this approach encourages students to reach their full potential in a supportive learning environment. One important theorist is Abraham Maslow, who introduced the hierarchy of needs. Maslow believed that students need their basic physical, emotional, and social needs to be supported before they can achieve their full potential. Another important theorist is Carl Rogers, who introduced student-centered learning. Rogers believed that teachers should act as facilitators who guide and support students rather than control every aspect of learning. There are four key principles of humanistic learning. First, learning is student-centered, meaning students play an active role in their own learning. Second, learning should be meaningful and connected to students' interests and experience. Third, teachers act as facilitators by guiding and encouraging students rather than simply delivering information. And finally, students are encouraged to become self-directed learners who take responsibility for their own learning. The core assumptions of this theory are that every learner has unique potential, emotion influence learning, and students learn best in a safe, respectful, and supportive classroom. Next, let's look at how the humanistic approach can be applied in a real classroom. This example is from a year 4 primary school English lesson on the topic My Family. In this lesson, students are encouraged to choose how they would like to present their work. They may draw a family tree, write a short paragraph, or give a simple oral presentation about their family members. Students also share their ideas with their classmates and reflect on what they have learned. This helps students build confidence, creativity, and responsibility for their own learning. The teacher's role is to create a supportive learning environment where every student feels respected and valued. Instead of simply giving instructions, the teacher facilitates learning by providing guidance, encouraging participation, and giving constructive feedback throughout the activity. Overall, this classroom activity reflects the humanistic approach because students learn by expressing their personal experiences in a supportive and student-centered environment. Let's look at the strength and limitation of the humanistic approach. One major strength is that it encourages personal growth. Students become more confident, independent, and motivated to learn because they are actively involved in the learning process and their opinions are valued. However, one limitation is that it can be difficult to implement in large classrooms. Teachers may not have enough time to provide individual attention and emotional support to every student. Overall, the humanistic approach promotes students' emotional well-being, confidence, and lifelong learning. However, it works best when combined with more structured teaching approaches to ensure both personal development and academic success. After examining the three learning theories, we can see that each offers a different perspective on how students learn. For cognitivism, focuses on developing students' thinking skills by helping them process and understand information. In contrast, behaviorism emphasizes observable behavior, where learning is reinforced through practice, rewards, and feedback. Meanwhile, humanism focuses on the whole learner by promoting confidence, independence, and personal growth in a supportive environment. These differences also influence the roles of teachers and students. In cognitivism and humanism, teachers mainly act as facilitators who guide learning, while in behaviorism, teachers play a more instructional role by providing reinforcement. Similarly, students in the cognitive and humanistic approaches are more actively involved in their learning, whereas behaviorism focuses on students responding to external stimuli and reinforcement. Overall, no single learning theory is the best for every classroom. Each approach has its own strengths and is suitable for different learning objectives. Therefore, teachers should integrate cognitive, behaviorist, and humanistic approaches to create a balanced learning environment that supports both students' academic achievement and personal development. In conclusion, cognitivism, behaviorism, and humanism each provide valuable perspectives on how students learn. For cognitivism, it helps students develop understanding, critical thinking, and problem solving skills. Meanwhile, behaviorism, it is effective in reinforcing positive behavior and helping students master basic knowledge and classroom routines. And for humanism, it emphasizes students' emotional well being, confidence, and personal growth by creating a supportive and learner centered environment. Each theory has its own strengths and limitations. Therefore, no single approach is suitable for every learning situation. By integrating cognitive, behaviorist, and humanistic approaches, teachers can create engaging, inclusive, and effective learning experience that support both students' academic achievement and their personal development.